But we begin with that breaking news from the Supreme Court of Canada. It has cleared the way for a cull of hundreds of ostriches due to avian flu at a farm in British Columbia. Word of the cull has led to protests in recent months and garnered international attention. The CBC's Janyce McGregor is on this story. She joins us this morning from Ottawa with more. So Janyce, good morning. Tell us about what just came out of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's important to understand what this is and what this isn't. Today, the Supreme Court has decided not to take this case, that the decisions of the original lower courts, including the Federal Court of Appeal, will stand. So it's not so much that the Supreme Court justices have sort of had any fresh arguments in front of them and made a ruling here. They have decided that there was no need for them to hear the case, that the legal rationale and the decisions made so far in the court system are sufficient and stand. There were no novel arguments or controversies or dissents, if you will, that needed to be taken up and reviewed and reconsidered by this country's top court. Just to remind people of the background of this case, it goes back to an avian flu outbreak. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency got a tip that there were ostriches on this farm that were sick. They investigated, they tested birds, discovered, yes, there was the presence of avian flu on this farm. Eventually, over the course of last December and January, some 69 birds died, but not all of the flock did. And so the owners were fighting to be able to keep the healthy birds that remained. But the Canadian Food Inspection Agency at the end of last year issued a cull order, arguing that it was important because the birds on this farm had been exposed to the virus to eliminate any possibility of transmission or this sort of escaping beyond this farm, for example, and posing a public health risk, to sort of get it under control by destroying all of the flock. That, of course, a very painful thing for the owners of these ostriches to hear and have to deal with. And it kicked off a very kind of public dispute about whether this was proper or whether this was inappropriate overreach on the part of the regulatory agency, in this case, the CFIA. And whether other arguments should be considered that would suggest that it would be okay if the birds were allowed to live. Now, something to understand about this particular ostrich farm, it had been involved in scientific research. The eggs going back to the pandemic were being studied by those who look at antibodies. They tried to make a scientific argument earlier in this process that there could be merit to continuing to study, especially the birds who had been healthy enough to not pass as a result of the avian flu outbreak at the farm, that this could be something that people could learn from, that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency argued that actually no, there was no scientific basis to suggest that there would somehow be merit in studying the healthy birds that remained. And they stuck to their guns, that a cull order was necessary for public health purposes. And argued, we now know successfully in the lower courts, that the cull should continue. And the CFIA did proceed with that cull up until sort of September. And there's been this question then of what would happen. They couldn't kind of proceed with the cull while this sort of attempt to get the Supreme Court to hear this case was pending, but now, as of today, they know that the Supreme Court is not going to take the case, and so it comes back to the CFIA's order to cull the birds and its process to proceed in that fashion versus the owners and their supporters, of whom there are many, who are arguing that this should not proceed.
Janyce, this story, it has garnered plenty of attention across the country, but then also around the world as well. It has caught the attention even of senior members of the Trump administration. Talk to us a little bit about all of that.
Yeah, because it's important to understand that this was a bit of a faint hope prospect. There weren't any significant sort of legal experts in this country who believed that the Supreme Court would actually take this case. What it ended up being is, you could say, a bit of a play for more time. But yes, it did garner a lot of attention, particularly south of the border. Got the backing of a rich New York billionaire with ties to the Trump administration. At one point in August, Donald Trump's health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., actually wrote to the CFIA asking it to reconsider. We also know that Dr. Oz, celebrity doctor, who also has ties to the Trump administration, a role there now, had offered to take the birds to a sanctuary ranch in Florida, a property to save them. And there were a body of supporters, protesters, who very much believed that this was the right thing to do, notwithstanding the scientific evidence to the contrary. So it's led to sort of a bigger debate about whether facts and evidence should be reconsidered by the CFIA instead of sticking to its original cull order, particularly in the face of birds that appeared healthy enough to get over it, recover, and carry on. That argument maybe isn't going away anytime soon. In Canada, the Carney government was not persuaded by these arguments from south of the border. It stuck by its regulatory agency, but there were other political voices in Canada, provincial premiers, who did raise the question, people known to be animal lovers or perhaps seeing sort of the outcry from some corners, did raise the question of whether, there should be a process to reconsider new or different facts and officially challenge the CFIA. Nevertheless, this attempt to do it and to get the Supreme Court to consider it has not been successful.
Okay, Janyce, thank you for this. We do appreciate it. The CBC's Janyce McGregor for us there in Ottawa. We're going to take you to British Columbia now for more on all of this. The CBC's Caroline Barghout joins me from Universal Ostrich Farms in Edgewood, British Columbia. So, Caroline, I know it's very early there. Are you hearing any reaction yet to the court's dismissal?
Well, when we got here, probably about an hour ago, there were several supporters standing outside, and I had talked to them, and they said they were extremely stressed. When the decision came out, I didn't hear anything at all, but there is some discussion over there. I think maybe there's some interviews going on. So there is reaction. Obviously, we expect everyone here to be very upset and very disappointed. Katie Pasitny, who is the spokesperson for Universal Ostrich Farms, she posted to her tens of thousands of followers on social media. She posted a very short video. She was visibly upset, and she said, she's basically pleading with the CFIA, for the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, not to cull these birds. The CFIA actually issued a statement shortly after the Supreme Court's decision, basically saying that the cull will take place and they are moving toward the complete depopulation and disposal measures. They also said that they, respected all of the court's decisions and have waited, and that they've, respected the decisions of the courts and the legal process, and they expect that the ostrich farm owners and supporters will do the same and follow the law. And the Supreme Court says that they can go ahead with this call. At this point, obviously, supporters are incredibly upset and incredibly disappointed, but we have not spoken to them at this point.
Okay, and Caroline, while we wait for that and while we wait for more reaction, what are you going to be watching for next?
Well, on our drive here, I should mention there were, 20 RCMP vehicles ahead of us. There is a very large RCMP presence here at Universal Ostrich Farms. And there has been, since the CFIA took over the farm in September, there have been some incidents, interactions between supporters and police. And supporters are very emotionally invested in these birds, and they want these birds to survive. And now that the Supreme Court has said that they will not hear this case, and the CFIA said that the cull will take place, people's emotions could get involved. So we don't know when the cull will take place, and we don't know how it will take place, but we presume it will take place shortly. So we're really just waiting to hear from the spokespeople for this farm and to speak to supporters to see, what their next steps are. If they're going to try to appeal to the government, what they will do, and if there's any way to prevent this cull. But at this point, it does not seem possible.
Okay, Caroline, thank you for this. Of course, we know that you will be watching for those developments as they take place. But for now, thank you. Caroline Barghout for us in Edgewood, British Columbia.